Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition number 2 of the APACOUC Talk Show. And today we have honor and the privilege to have a fantastic guest, basically a personality that a lot of people know very well in the Oracle community. Yep, and we know that basically that person is Maria Colgan. Maria, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thank you. Now, is oops, the system is playing with myself too. No worries. And we are here today basically to know a little bit more about the Maria, the professional, outside Maria, not professional, sorry, the person behind the profession. Uh, and because you're so inspiration to so many people in IT and also so many women, because honestly, even with so many years that we have changing the a lot of women are involved in professional, we've still not, in my opinion, we're still not close enough yet to have the number of women being recognized in IT, especially as they deserve. One example, I manage so many events around the world, especially in the APAC. We have the Groundbreakers APAC tour, and if I'm not wrong, we have around 2 or 3 female speakers over 100 speakers. And when I go look the list of enrollments, only 1% of the participants are females.
Mhm.
That means that it's something that still need to change and grow, and is a lot of barriers and situations that we still need to break within the IT. And as a inspiration to many women in IT, how was your experience when you started in IT? Was that hard? Was something different because you were a woman, or uh, and what brought you to IT?
Excellent question. I definitely think you're right. We can do a lot to improve the number of women in IT. For me, actually, my love of computers and maths and science started in school. I went to an all-girls school. I don't know whether that makes a difference or not. I know here in the US, they talk a lot about girls not stepping up for math and science when they're in mixed, or co-ed school situations. But I went to a convent school. The nuns were very clear. You were encouraged to do the subjects that you were good at. And I really wasn't very good at languages or literature and that kind of stuff. I was much better at maths and science. And so my love started there. My dad bought me our first computer for the family, really, when I was pretty young, still in primary school, going into secondary school or high school. And that's really where I started it. And then I went on and studied computer science in university, and Oracle were kind enough to give me my first job straight out of university. And the rest is history, as they would say.
Apologies, I forgot to put myself out of mute. That's the things that happen when you are live. Apologies. No, I was saying that no, that's very great to know about you and my sister, my wife. A lot of people I know also grow in the same kind of situation. Girls only school. uh, And you are Irish, from Irish background. Probably you have a lot of that too. No, that's great. And how different you see the if compared with when you started, and the IT and all the professionalism and the woman in IT today compared back then, what you see, what's the differences?
So I think the biggest difference is the scope of jobs that are available in IT. When I was studying computer science way back when, you were basically studying to be a developer. The notion of being a product manager, being a designer, being, all of those things really weren't there, or at least weren't visible to me, I should say. I think some of the roles were there, but they weren't visible to me as a student I just assumed I would go straight in the door as a developer. And although women are fantastic developers, I think we're nearly better at the other roles that are available to us in IT. I think women make some of the best product managers. They also make some of the best designers, the UI designers. That some of the best ones I know are definitely female. So are a lot of the brand, the people who are doing a lot of that design elements of it. So definitely that's very different now. The number of possibilities. So just because you don't necessarily love to write code for 8 hours a day doesn't mean that there isn't a role for you in IT, whether you are male or female, because there are just so many more options now than there were when I was studying, or at least that I was aware of when I was studying. But I think that's probably the biggest difference between then. Unfortunately, the percentages of male to female haven't changed that much. In my graduating class, there were 25 of us, and women made up 20% of that group. So it's not a huge percentage, but probably more than we often see at conferences.
Yeah, fully agree with you. When I started, also, I remember, well, DBAs did not exist in that time yet. We have databases. When we start working with Oracle databases, I had the honor to be a member of the first team to introduce Oracle to Latin America in a project in Brazil that for a 16 years old, having free food in a project in a hotel, that was a dream coming true. And that's why I blame Oracle, going from 70 kilos to 100 kilos in 6 months in the project.
I'm 100% with you. Oracle's responsible for all my weight gain. You're dead right.
Yes, and in this project, we have basically developers and analysts. And the analysts was mostly females working in the project and managing everything. We were the developers just following their orders kind of and doing a lot of things. But they were basically the project managers and the analysts doing that kind of work. But it's very interesting that the things were very similar to you when you started. I just want to remind everyone that's watching live, I can see we have people live at the moment, that you can also ask questions to Maria Colgan live using the chat option in the right side of the YouTube. You have a live chat over there. And also, if not wrong, because we're also trying by the first time going live in Facebook, we have the same over there. And please feel free to write questions to Maria, and we will see how it goes. We are also testing this new functionality and this new tool together. And Maria, if you could change one thing in your career, what it will be? Is something you regret or something you want to do in a different way or better?
Oh gosh. I thought about this question when you sent it over, and honestly, it sounds very naive maybe, but I have no regrets. I have enjoyed all of the jobs that I've done during my career. I'm over 25 years working for Oracle, scary as that may sound, but I've done so many different roles and jobs underneath the safety umbrella, so to speak, of working for Oracle. They've always allowed me to move around and try different activities and different roles inside the organization, from starting way at the beginning as a developer myself, working on the IBM OS2 port of the Oracle database way back in Oracle 7, all the way through to being a performance engineer, using the database, going on site, helping customers get better performance out of their databases, and then all the way through to now product management and setting the product direction and strategy. It's been an amazing career. So it's hard to find any regrets. I suppose if I was looking in from the outside, one of the things people would probably say is, would you not have liked to try a different company, work somewhere else? Maybe, might be. There's still time. Maybe that'll be something I try.
That's good. No, fantastic. Now you see the question looks kind of tricky, but was a fantastic answer. That was great. Yes. Sometimes that can be a tricky question. I just want to take this opportunity before we continue to Say thank you to our sponsors, CloudDB, Oracle, and also Como with the new platforms we are using with the user groups. Also to all user groups, they are supporting the APACOUC, and we are working together in the Asia Pac as one. New Zealand Oracle user group, the Independent Australia user group, Singapore user group, a few ones for China, that's so many to say, Japan user group, Korea user group, also so many Java user groups that are working with us, the Nepal user group, the India Apex user group, and I think so that's all of them. If I recall, we have so many that is sometimes is hard to remember all of them. If I miss someone, please, I apologize in advance. And saying that, Maria, what are your passions? What are your hobby? What you do outside when you're not in front of the community, evangelizing or working behind the Oracle databases?
Well, aside from Oracle, which is obviously my first love, no, I love to bake and to entertain. I can't blame Oracle perhaps for all the weight gain. Some of it may be because of my sweet tooth. So yeah, I do love to bake and cook for my family and friends and entertain. We haven't been able to do as much of that over the last 2 years. Or my other passion, which is to travel and to do wildlife photography. But I'm really hoping that now that we're turned a corner in this whole COVID era, and we begin to do international travel again, I hope to have an opportunity to do that. There's nothing better to me than to be out in Africa, in the Africa bush, with the camera and just being able to see everything that Mother Nature has to offer and just realize and be very humble about how you fit into this grand old scheme of life. Oftentimes we tend to think we're very important, and nothing, brings you back down to earth as realizing where you are in the food chain with Mother Nature. And so, yeah, that's another big passion of mine. If I'm not at home, that's where you'll find me.
Well, that's nice. That's great. Great to hear about you that you love photography and all that. I had the opportunity once to go to the user groups in South Africa, in Durban, and go to the parks over there and take some photos. Oh no, it's beautiful. No,
Definitely worse places you could be, right?
Oh yes, it's something. It's so horrible. No, now another tricky question: database developer or architect? What's that for you? Where you fit over there?
Honestly, I know my boss would like me to say, "Oh, architect," but honestly, my heart is still database, 100%. If I could go back and do any of the jobs I had before, I'd go back to the optimizer in a heartbeat, and continue to just be the product manager for the Oracle optimizer. That was definitely a job for life, and one that I still have a big, big passion for. So yeah, definitely database, I'm afraid.
That's great. And saying that as a database, I think so. Is something that you will have worked for so many years, starting with, you mentioned version 6 or 7 Oracle.
Yeah. Yep. So yeah. 7.3 was my first to actually get my fingers on the code was 7.3. Yeah.
You're making me feel old now, because I started before with version 5, and I was a beta tester of version 7 in that also.
Oh, well, I apologize now then for the code you were beta testing. Yeah.
They always said that, how they call the version of Oracle 6 that really work? Version 7.
Yeah.
If not wrong, we got 23 or 27 underlying versions of 6.
Yeah, there were a lot of version numbers in 6. Yeah. Because back in the day, you were still shipping the code on tapes. We were just switching over to CDs when I got there. And so in the Oracle office in Dublin, where I joined, they had all the tapes of the different releases they'd worked on previously. And that's when I realized how many versions of 6 there really were. because there was a whole wall dedicated to the Oracle 6 tapes. Yeah.
Yeah, they make me funny because that mention of how we interact. I remember my first interaction with Oracle headquarters. We hit a bug on the beta testing of version 7, and we report that by telex. In that at time, it was a faster way to report. And we are waiting to receive back the code. And that code we're getting when it's small, it was in that big floppy disks. Oops, the camera, I think that was telling that to do a zoom. Okay, no worries. And let's just fix my camera that's driving me nuts to get me so close. And basically, we're expecting to get that big floppy disk for a few weeks. Take generally by mail, take 1 or 2 months to receive it. My surprise when we received it was a small envelope. Oh, that's new. I was surprised. Okay, maybe a new technology or something. When I opened the envelope, the technical people use the big flop disk, load the data, and send it to somebody in the office, a secretary or someone to send by mail. And because the floppy disk didn't fit in the envelope she had, she just folded and grabbed it all around.
No.
That was my interaction with Oracle headquarters.
Oh, that's fantastic. No.
That's things that happens with IT. But that was also one of my funny stories that I have. I have many more. But could you share with us a funny situation in your career or professionally or when you're presenting, something really funny that happens? For sure you have more than one.
I have a couple of them. I have one that I find very entertaining, and hopefully you guys will too. I've been very, very fortunate to work with Larry Ellison on some of his keynotes for Open World. And where in the last Open World where he was doing live demos for the autonomous database, he was having trouble with the mouse. And so I kept telling him he needed to just click harder on the mouse. The mouse they gave us was very, very stiff. And so while on stage, when it didn't work, he said during his keynote, and you can go back and watch it and you'll hear him say it, the girl backstage told me I just need to press harder. So that was my claim to fame, that I was called out in his keynote, which was one of the cute, funny stories. He's also very generous backstage. He always has the best cookies in his green room or dressing room. So I have stolen a few of his oatmeal raisin cookies from backstage too, which is always fun.
That means you are the one responsible now that he have someone clicking the mouse for him in the backstage and saying next.
I take no responsibility for next slide, please. No, that's definitely not me.
Okay, and now the opposite situation. Any not so funny or good experience during your career?
One that's a bit of both, funny and not so good experience. I was very, very lucky and was offered the opportunity to deliver the workshop day at the last day of the Hot Sauce Conference. If you're familiar with that, it was a performance-focused conference that used to happen in Dallas. And the year I was asked to do it, I was doing it on the optimizer. I was all excited. I prepared all of the material to train the folks. And unfortunately, in the hotel, the week we were there for the conference, there was a stomach bug going around. And I had been very careful. I knew I had to do this workshop, to very careful not to catch it until just the night before the conference. So I spent the night before the workshop, I think in Ireland, we would say on the porcelain telephone to God, basically emptying my system of everything I probably ate or drank that entire week. So the following morning, I had to go and present the workshop, and the folks in the hotel were very worried about me throwing up on stage. And so they were very kind enough to put a large waste paper basket next to me, just in case the stomach bug hit during the presentations, that I wouldn't make a mess of their stage or whatever. The good news is folks, I didn't actually throw up on stage during that one, but it made for a very interesting workshop, let's just say.
That's interesting. And I heard there are some similar stories for other people, and especially when you travel to countries that um, they are very different food or everything different that you use it to. That it can be tricky sometimes. And now, next question now about. I know you are a fantastic presenter, a fantastic speaker in conferences. What was your best speaker experience and why?
Oh, some of my best speaker experiences, I think, are probably at Open World, and probably talking about the optimizer was some of my best moments and experiences. Seeing the aha moments in the with people, being able to explain something that maybe didn't they didn't understand or weren't familiar with, was definitely a great experience. And to be able to do that to such a large group of people, because everybody going to Open World back then were predominantly DBAs or developers, and the optimizer was definitely a black box. And so having a room with over 1,000 people in it, all anxious to learn about the optimizer, was incredible. But probably the most fun was the year Jonathan Lewis and I did a joint session together. We were offering tips to the audience about dealing with the optimizer. There was a lot. I don't think I've laughed as much while presenting as I did that time with Jonathan. He's a phenomenal co-speaker and just incredibly witty. He's very, very fast on his feet. And so that was probably the best experience I've had. But I've also loved doing the smaller groups too, because there's something nice and intimate about that when people feel comfortable enough to make it a two-way street. So, you know, I let's just face it, I love to talk, and I'll talk to anybody, whether it's a big room, small room, just me, as I have been doing here in the spare room for the last 2 years. But yeah, no, all of those engagements have been amazing. So I shouldn't knock it. Small groups are just as good as big ones.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I had rooms with thousands of people with no problem, and I had rooms that have 2, 3 people on that just sit it instead of a do a presentation, become a chat, a round table, and answer other questions and things like that. And but that thing about the the audience feedback, and I was mentioned like in the open world, it sometimes can play against you. I had one example in India, one of the first sangams. Um, uh, One of the main speakers, I will not say the name, but he was getting the main room that can fit a lot of people, and I was having a side room with probably 20, 30 people. And in the end, everybody came to my session, and we have just a few people in the main room, and they switch us to the different rooms, and then I became the main speaker in the main room, and he came to the small one. And when I was giving the presentation, the session, I have so many people in front of me. When I was telling, was a session about tips and best practice for DBAs. And I remember saying a lot of tips, telling why to use it, the good thing, the not, and then everybody shaking their heads. And I was trying to sweat. Oh my gosh, these people is not agreeing with me. What's going on? What I'm doing wrong? And every time I said something, everybody. And I started sweating and sweat. And then I learned that that's basically they agreeing with you. And that's fun situation that when you're looking for feedback and sometimes they can play against you. But I never sweat more than in that session in my life.
Yeah, I have to say it's daunting too when you have a situation like that, when you're expecting just a small group of people and you end up with a very large group of people and they don't seem to be agreeing with you, which is always interesting. Yeah.
Good. Now another personal question. You a cat or a dog person?
Oh, so it's if we're talking domestically, I'm definitely a dog person. The reason I say that is I grew up with dogs. I love dogs. If I didn't travel as much as we have been traveling prior to COVID, I would definitely have a dog. So definitely at home dog person. But if you take me to Africa and you ask me about what animals I love to see and I love to photograph, the big cats, especially the leopards, are, oh my gosh, personal favorite and something I could look at all day, every day. So I don't know if that makes me a cat person or not, so to speak, but big cats, definitely.
Of course, you do that using a very good zoom camera, right?
No, you'd be surprised. You get closer than you think. That's definitely one of the funny stories we have. I do remember one of the first safaris my husband and I took. We came around the corner on the dirt track, and there was a lion sat literally on the side of the road, and the ranger just stopped, and it was lion and then me. And at that moment, the lion decided he was going to call his brothers and started roaring. And I'll tell you now, there is nothing more awe-inspiring and terrifying as looking down the throat of a lion who's roaring. So yeah, sometimes you get closer than you think. You don't always need a zoom lens.
That's interesting. That's good to know. And that's something that for sure is an amazing experience of doing that kind of things and have the opportunity to get that close.
Yeah, not one I would necessarily long for again. Maybe,
Well, you have to remember
maybe
the
10
only
meters
rule
next time.
the only rule in that situation, you need to be faster than the person in your side. That's it.
Well, so everybody else in the vehicle, including my husband, thought it was hilarious because apparently my face was just and I was definitely the one that they all thought they could outrun for sure. So they felt very safe.
That's great. And another even more tricky question, just to know, how do you see yourself in the next 5, 10 years? I know that's a typical kind of interview.
I was going to say, am I
job
getting a
interview
job?
situation.
Yeah.
Look, I'm not asking professionally, could be personally, could be anything.
Oh, 5 to 10 years. Good question. Where do I see myself? Maybe even retired. Maybe just doing technical stuff for fun would be nice. That's definitely something I would consider in 5 to 10 years' time. But I would hope we're all back to normal and we have an opportunity to travel as freely as we did before. That's definitely something I'd love to see happen. And it's definitely something I'd like to be doing in 5 to 10 years. Maybe I'll be doing videos from Africa instead of videos from Oracle. That'd be nice. But I don't know. That's an excellent question. And one I obviously haven't thought enough about. How about yourself? Do you know where you're going to be in 5 to 10 years' time?
Look, every time the people ask me that, because I grew up in Brazil, moved back to Chile, then moved to the US for 10 years. Then I moved back to Chile for 1 year. Then moved to New Zealand for 8 years. Now I'm in Australia for 8 years. I have that every time I have said, no, that's enough. That's where I'm going to be. We never know. Even Tom, when we started doing things together and creating the Latin American tours and start to present, he made me make a PPT just to introduce myself and showing the movement all across and all the challenges that when I was in Brazil, everybody called me the Chilean guy. Was I was in Chile, nobody believed I was Chilean. They think I was Brazilian because of my Brazilian accent, and they call me the Pelé. When I was in US, they call me the Mexican. That was happening stereotype with all the Latin Americans. When I was in New Zealand, everybody think I was Indian, and you never win. And that's why now that I'm here, I'm settled, my kids are getting older, I think so that's it. I see myself because I can say I have 40, I will be 49. And from the 40, I worked with Oracle since I was 16. That means I'm 33 years working with Oracle technologies, but I never worked to Oracle and for Oracle directly. I helped to open the Oracle Brazil office when it was not the office over there. I supported, but I was the first Oracle instructor in Brazil to give trainings to internally. Then I moved to Chile. I helped Oracle Education in that time to start giving the trainings in Chile. But I worked very close with Oracle so many years, but I never worked for Oracle. if I tell you where I see myself in 5, 10 years time, maybe it's time to join Oracle and see a little bit and retire being over there. Who knows? That's maybe where I'm going to end up.
No, see, you're much better at this than I am. I still have no idea after that where I'm going to be, but maybe we'll try Australia. Who knows? Yeah, it's a good question.
Look, you are welcome to the next APAC tour. We are planning to go back to face at the end of this year. If that happens, you are more than welcome to come and visit some of the countries we go to the tour. Maybe New Zealand, Australia, Singapore, Japan, Korea, China. An invitation is there.
Oh, well, thank you very much. I'd be very grateful to do it. Fingers crossed it all stays clear and that we get to do that and do it in person would be fantastic.
Now, fantastic. Now, the last questions I have for you is basically, is there anything else that you would like to share with the Asia Pacific community, or any advice to the current members, students, or any woman is starting to start their career on IT?
Don't be afraid to ask. That would be my one piece of advice for anybody in any job or role. Don't be afraid to ask. If an opportunity comes up, the worst thing people can say if you volunteer or you ask for it is the worst they can say is no. So always ask. It's worked for me in my career. I started as a developer at Oracle. I saw a job advertised to be a performance engineer. They were looking for 5 years worth of experience. I barely had 1 year out of university at that stage, but I asked, and one of the VPs or the managers in that's what I did. And so always ask.
Much, Maria. Thank you. Apologies for that technical. I just pressed the wrong button, putting a video by mistake. Again, these things happen when you're doing things live. And basically, that's interesting because the first person that gave me the advice, never be afraid to ask, was Tom Kite. And oh God, I took his word and I asked him many times every year, and I got him to go on his word. But that is interesting. Now that's good, and it's true. You never know the answer to any question if you don't ask. If you never ask, you never will know.
Exactly. Ask. And like I said, the worst thing the person can say is no, I can't help you, or no, you can't have the job, or no. And you know what? No is not the worst thing you're ever going to hear. So don't be afraid.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Maria. And again, all looks like no one decided to ask questions in the live chat. That's sad. I still want to try the functionality, but if maybe next time we have another interview with Rich Nimick in 2 weeks. That will be our next guest. And again, Maria, was a huge privilege and honor to have you here. And as always, hopefully you don't retire in the next 5-10 years. We have Maria Colgan for a while. And thank you so much for taking the time.
No, thank you so much for having me. It's been a blast. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, I will say thank you to everyone. Please look after yourself, take care, and be safe. And see you in 2 more weeks in the next talk show. Thank you, Maria.
Thanks.